Hey, what's going on, guys? It is your host with the most, Underdone Toast here, coming live. I am joined by my co-host, Z Buckner, for episode 14 of the Social...
It's me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Episode 14 of the Social Eclipse Podcast. Today, we're going to be getting into a rather important topic in the world of philosophy, which is theology. The topic we're going to be covering is... how can there be thousands of religions but only one God? And I'm sure we will divert the topic into several different aspects. So we could start there or anywhere. But first of all, I will say that I claim myself to be a Christian. And then, Buck, would you say you're agnostic?
Yeah, I think that's about as close as you're going to get, yeah.
Okay. So starting off with the first question. This really is probably the core of all philosophy. Because whenever we talk about like what matters most to us humans, or where humanity's going, or the trolley problem, morality, a lot of it always comes back to if there's a higher being, like telling us what is right and what is wrong, or what the destiny of humanity is. So, just starting off with our first question, if there is a God, then why are there so many religions out there? And it's a big question that I've heard tons of times, and it's a really good question, because you think that if there's one God and his like abilities or his characteristics don't change, then humanity wouldn't interpret him in different ways. Everyone would interpret him in a single way, and religions have different truths, and there's only one truth. Or is there?
I think we have to step back before we begin and kind of evaluate our Western biases that most of Western society right now, at least, believes that there is only one God. But if you look at like history, as far as like how many people, religious people, like what they believed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like more humans have believed that there's multiple.
I would say in the vast span of history that would be true. Nowadays on Earth, I would say that most religions are monotheistic, because there's like Judaism, Christian, Islam, and then, you have like Asian religions, which is mostly polytheistic. But yeah, you're right. If you're looking at the vast history of humanity, like going back, especially before Christianity, it was, the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods, the Roman gods, Native American gods and spirits. I mean, almost every religion seemed to have like thousands of gods instead of a singular one.
Yeah. Which completely kind of changes the question, I would think.
Yeah. So instead of thousands of religions but one God, you could frame it as like there's been thousands of religions who've believed in several gods. So how do we know which one is the true God, or how do we know which religion is correct in their interpretation of what God is? I
think you could approach it two ways, right? There's either, like nowadays you could say, oh, everybody kind of believes the same thing, right? They believe in a God. That's just how they interpret that God is different. That kind of falls apart when you take into account like polytheistic belief, right? I guess you could argue that the God is split, into, the kind of Christian theology, like he's in everything type thing. But, or is that Catholic? Is that strictly Catholic? I'm not sure
either.
But, but it kind of takes apart the idea of, oh, we all believe in the same thing. That's a lot harder to argue when you look at like Hinduism, and they've got thousands, like tens of thousands of gods or something like that, like a crazy high number. Um, it's a lot, yeah. It's harder to see the point that everyone kind of believes the same thing, different interpretations when you take into account like Egyptians even, or the Greeks. Um, but even then, you can compare like the Greeks and the Romans. It's often argued that they did believe in the same gods. You know, they just had different names, different stories behind them. But as far as who they were and what kind of gods they were and what they were like in charge over, I guess, for lack of a better term, a lot of people consider those like similar at the very least, different interpretations of the same gods. So it's interesting to see the similarities between like different religions and you know, you can even draw similarities between like Islam and Christianity, really. I mean, one God, sure, like totally different beliefs, but like they both believe in certain events throughout history that were the same, you know. So there is some truth to the fact that like, you know, theologies, they share certain things sometimes.
Yeah, and something that's always amazed me a little bit is if you do go back in time, thousands and thousands of years, the world, even without communication and with so many different isolated civilizations, it seemed like back then 99% of them believed in a higher power, which is really interesting. I mean, you can look at African tribes. They believed in their own god. Native American tribes back then, or I guess back then it had been Mayan or Incan or whatever. They believed in a higher power. You had, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans. So I wonder if deep down, like humans have... This kind of goes back to what you were saying in the other podcast, either last week or a couple weeks ago. I wonder if deep down humans have a sense in them that like we need to worship something, or we need to give ourselves to something higher than ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm not sure what the answer is. I think you could, like, if you wanted to spend some time thinking about the reason, you know, like not really the reason, like we're not getting into similarities yet, but we could start at the beginning, like why, you're right. Why do most people follow some sort of religion over history? I think there could be multiple answers. I think that's one of them, you know, like the need to worship and give to something greater than yourself. I think we've talked about this before, that one of the reasons or one of the arguments could be made that like there's comfort in like an afterlife. We've talked about that before. There's also comfort in not even just an afterlife, but like in the current life, that something else is at play. Like we're not in complete control, and like in a good way, you know, something's looking after us, something is watching over us. Yeah, can you think of any others?
Yeah, well, one way that I've always interpreted it, because it's a little baffling to me that you have so many civilizations that haven't contacted each other, and they all came up with, hey, there's like a human in the sky watching over us, or
Right.
our ancestors are living on. Like, that just seems like such a wild and out of place idea that it really piques my interest. I think that one reason for it is because even without thinking about theology at all, humans want to live for a purpose, and the only way we can interpret like why we're here or where we're going are through the eyes of humans, right? We can't look from the third person point of view, or we can't look at it from Mother Nature where it's just, you know, eat, reproduce, die, and you're done. Like everything that we recognize through reality, I feel like there's something deep inside of us where we're like, it needs to be through a human perspective. You know, it can't just be through Mother Nature.
Right.
There has to be like a god or our ancestors or something who are guiding us through this.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that. Not just a higher power, but I think, especially in polytheistic religions, I think another similar reason is people like to have things. How do I describe this? It's like science. People like to have reasons for things, explanations. People like to understand the world around them, even from the very beginning. Like people kind of understood there was a reason for things, you know. We like to find meaning in things. You know, you hear about that story about, I think it was Columbus or whatever, and he comes over and an eclipse happens, and they're like, whoa, like, you know, magic, religion, whatever have it. Like, people are like, why? That's weird. You know, I've never seen that before. Or they like to assign meaning to even simple things. And I see that most in the early, like, Greek. You know, every god was over something. This was the god of fire. This was the god of thunder. This was the god of war, or the god of beauty. People assigned even mundane things in real life to higher powers, and then they split them into multiple gods. So I think part of it is a means to understand things that are going on around us.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I know that back then, like you were just talking about the Greeks, you know, they see a giant ball of light in the sky, and they're like, you know, I don't know what the heck that is, so let's just say it's a god. Let's just say it's Ares flying through the sky. Or the stars, you know, make constellations and stories out of the stars. How did those stars get there? Well, this story of Hercules and you know, whatever story you're talking about is why the stars are there. So I think you're completely right. Humans have something very deep inside of us where we're like, okay, if something good or bad has happened, there has to be a purpose for it. Like it can't be completely random, because we're fearful that if things are random, then that means that we don't have control over it.
Or purpose.
Or purpose. So, but, you know, if you have thousands of gods and maybe your husband's going off to war, then instead of saying, hey, I have no control over this, he could die, you could pray to the god of war and beg for mercy that he's going to live. So I completely agree with that. I think that that's one huge reason why humans have felt the need of a higher power. It's because, we all feel like there has to be a purpose, because if there isn't a purpose, then that's just kind of depressing.
Yeah, I think it's comforting. There's definitely a huge reason. So explanation / purpose / comforting. I think they all kind of go together. And, you know, I think from what I know about history, like even the biggest, most, like the emperors and I'm trying to think of the term for Egypt, were they pharaohs? Pharaohs, like even they like believed in the gods, right? It wasn't just like you know, something that just the common man believed. So it had, no matter what class level you were at, you know, you believed in the same thing. I'm not sure what I'm getting at with that, but I think it's an interesting point to make, that it was universal, right? Even the pharaohs were buried in accordance to the laws of like Egyptian afterlife, and they had religious, you know, hieroglyphics. So there was no divide, you know, as far as we know. If you were Egyptian, you almost always believed in Egyptian religion, right? If you were Greek, you always believed in the Greek gods. I think that's a pretty interesting point to make, because nowadays, like, there's more than one religion wherever you go. Well, of course, you've got like the dominant religion in each country, but as far as I know, history tells us that there were definitely phases according to, you know, your culture. And it's interesting. I told you I was learning about Vikings in a couple episodes ago. It was kind of a big deal to them when they found Christianity, and at first there was a lot of pushback, right? Like, that's one of the reasons Vikings like went to war and conquered, is like they wanted to prove themselves that their gods were more powerful than the Christian God. But eventually, hundreds of years go by, half of the Vikings were like Christian Vikings, you know, and that's really interesting. I don't know if I'm losing the plot here, but
no, I do.
I don't think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
I just wanted to go back to something you said on how unifying religion is, because Oh. Alright, sorry about that. My baby was crying for just a second, but got them all taken care of. What I was going to say is religion is one of, if not the most unifying thing in a civilization. Like, through history, you were just talking about the Vikings and the Egyptians. Like, the biggest thing you can do to bring everyone together and have the same morals, have the same goals, and follow the same laws, I feel like is through religion. Because if you can convince everyone that, hey, you're not doing this because I'm saying it. Like, you need to do this because there's a higher power who's saying to do it. And if you don't follow these laws, I'm telling you right now, then you're going to be punished not just by us, but by that higher power. And that can really, for better or for worse, that can really unify civilization and, like, recognizing, hey, we're all in this together. We all need to follow these laws. And I think that the biggest part of that is it's not just, like, what you're doing in public, but if they can change how you're thinking or how you're acting in private when no one else is looking, then that is going to be an even better and more accurate indicator of if you're going to be like a well-behaving citizen in that civilization.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So, very, very good point there. Okay, so moving on to another question I was thinking of. So, could it be that every religion, since there are, probably at this point throughout history, thousands of religions that happen, could it be that every religion contains partial truths about the same God? Or do you think that because they contradict each other, like, they could all be wrong, or at best case scenario, only one could be correct?
It's a lot of questions in one question.
So I
don't think it's out of the realm of impossibility that, like, they share truth at all. Like, I'm sure, like, you could get two people together from different religions and then have them agree on theology. I think that's far-fetched.
Yeah. But there could only be, like, one absolute truth, though, right?
That's the question, isn't it?
Because...
Explain. Expound.
Well, what I mean is, take one religion that thinks that once you die, you go to heaven or hell, and then take another religion that believes once you die, you become reincarnated as another animal or another human. I mean, those are just two completely different truths, and you can't have them both be true at the same time. So the question is, like, do all religions have pieces of the truth? Has God reached out and given them pieces of a truth? Or if there were not a God, would that mean that they all just originated from themselves and that it's all just different interpretations of the purpose of life?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the answer to that one is, but I would imagine, I mean, you can argue against my point, but I would imagine one of them would have to be either all correct or closest to correct. You know what I mean? Like, it's very possible that the truth hasn't been completely either discovered or revealed, or however we want to say it, or believed, and that it's just a matter of who's the most correct. And so then, like, a lot of different interpretations can be closer or farther apart or share the same or whatever. I guess you can counteract me, but
yeah, it's something that I personally have struggled with, because you think if there's a singular God, there's a higher power, and there's a single truth, and if you want to join him in the afterlife, it's going to rely on knowing about that single truth. It'd make a lot more sense to me that there would only be one worldwide religion, and whether you get into heaven depends on whether you follow God's law, right? But that's not what it is in the world that we live in. What it is if you believe in a certain religion, then you get into heaven, which is confusing because, you know, you're like, oh, heaven is where the good guys go, the people who follow the laws. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that it would be more based off of belief than your morals.
Right. I think morals is kind of where it would, you know, that's where it makes the most sense. As far as like, I mean, we could get into the whole conversation of, okay, now there is an afterlife, and you're implying that there is some sort of like test, for lack of a better term. Like most religions believe that Earth is kind of I don't know, like an exam to get into the afterlife. You know, you have to do a certain amount of things, whether that be, you know, do this to get into heaven or die in battle to get into Valhalla. You know, so like most religions have some sort of qualifications to get to the next life. I'm not sure if Hinduism does, to be reincarnated. I think you just live, right?
I'm not
but
sure.
Yeah, not sure, but that's true, right? If there was one true religion and one true God, or many true gods, then that would mean there is one set of qualifications, right? Be it vague or very specific, that God would either expect, or, you know, there's a set of rules and thereby a set of universal morals that is either set by him or he follows or what have you. So that's kind of a rabbit hole, but I see where your mind's at.
Right, because most humans who believe in a higher power believe that we originate from that higher power. Like, I bet there are very few religions who are going to believe that, like, God and us coexist, but we didn't spawn from God at some point. I don't think I've ever heard of a religion like that. But
yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a huge aspect of a religion. It's like, hey, if you follow our religion, then you will be reunited with God. Otherwise, you could go to eternal damnation. And with so many different religions saying that over the years, it just really makes you think, like, hey, this could just be a way of people getting you to join the religion more with threats and blackmail than in actuality, like, following the laws and inspirations of a loving God. You know, it reminds me a lot of the book 1984 that you and I read recently. It's like there are so many things. Religion could be used for wonderful things or for horrible things. And I bet you anything that throughout the years, it's been used numerous amounts of times purely for brainwashing people and getting them to follow you and do exactly what you want without any inspiration. So there's...
Well, it's kind of hard to argue against that point when you look at the statistic that, like, most of the world's wars have something to do with religion. You know what I mean? I mean, even the more modern wars like World War II, sure, they weren't started over a religion like most of the ancient wars were, like crusades and what have you, but you can still, you know, Christianity, Judaism, you know, like, played a big point or a big part in the war, so you can kind of relate it somehow. So yeah,
I've mentioned recently I finished a book by Sam Harris called The End of Faith, and that's the biggest point he makes throughout it. He's like a pretty hardcore atheist, and his biggest point is, like, throughout the years, humans, whenever they go into conflict, it's mostly because of tribalism, you know, different beliefs, different morals on what's right and wrong. But usually that tribalism is filtered through a religion in particular. So yeah, the Crusades, or like Aztecs versus Incas, or whatever you think throughout history. Even things like Islam and Judaism is still at war with each other constantly in the Middle East. And a huge point that he makes is, Like, whether, like, look at politics, for example. In politics right now, we see things ramping up, but it's because it's right versus left. And when you view wars or battles or huge differences in opinions, you view it as red and blue. But he was saying that the exact same thing has happened with religion. The only difference is that those morals have contained a higher power, whereas these other forms of tribalism haven't. So it seems like it's a constant cycle that humanity has been through, and that ultimately leads us to the question of, hey, if you look at humanity as a whole, has religion been more of a help or more of a hindrance as time has gone on?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, because you could argue that a lot of the most amazing things over time, like technology-wise and purely like, look at ambition, look at empires. I mean, of course, empires thrive and grow over like terrible consequences, and I mean that's what conquering means, right? Some terrible deeds and overthrowing other parts of humanity. So I'm not arguing that it's all good, but I'm just saying, like, on pure spectacle, like pure grand scale of achievement, like religion has pushed a lot of incredible grand achievements and feats, and it was a what's the word, like a reason to do it, a proponent for these people to do these grand things. It's still that way, The Catholic Church is the largest church on earth, and like just their pure influence and the things that they can do and the reach that they have is incredible. And you can of course you can put money, you can attribute that to money, but there's no doubt that religion, just theology, the draw that has is incredible. So I think it's both bad and good, but yeah, there's definitely a huge factor in a lot of things over history.
Yeah, even I think the Vatican is technically the world's smallest country, I think, or it's either a country.
I think it is.
What was that?
I think it is.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's the word country, but I know what you're talking about. Like governed territory or
maybe
whatever.
It's territory. But you're right. Any single religion can have an enormous amount of impact over its followers, even more so than a government. Like, I know that if the United States government told everyone in the United States to do something crazy, like give up our guns, or to centralize into a single state like Colorado or something, then a lot of people would just say, heck no, screw you. But on the other hand, if you were to look at a religion where people aren't just following the law because they're told to and because there's consequences, but they're truly following the law because they believe it to be right, like deep down, then you can convince millions, maybe even billions of people, depending on which religion, to do some pretty incredible things, either for better or for worse. So it really is, may be the singular most powerful and influential aspect of humanity, I think, because no other animals or plants or living organisms have religion, only humans. And you got to wonder, does that tie in to us having like higher thought processes, and that's why we all, or most of us, believe in religion? Or is it because there truly is a higher power that only guides humanity and not any other species?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We can go into that. I just a couple points. Number one, I would argue that when you bring up politics, I would argue the reason for people's political affiliations and their religious affiliations aren't that different. And I'm not saying that like a correlation. Like if I believe this, I'm more likely to believe this. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about like pure belief. You know what I mean? Like comes from the same aspects. Why do I believe this politically? regardless of what religion I believe, these are my morals. Morals go into politics big time. And, that's how we see the world. So, of course, the argument that religion has more of an influence on people and their decisions and everything is true. But I think politics is very similar. It's just that religion has such a larger reach, it transcends the bounds of countries' borders, you know what I mean? And even cultures. There's many different cultures that believe the same religion nowadays. It's a lot bigger than that. But if you think about history class in K through 12 or even college, how often are you learning about religion in regards to a certain event or a time period or anything like that? Like it's always. I mean, I always remember you were learning about religion caused this or was a part of this or people did this because of their religious beliefs. So, yeah, it's arguably the most influential factor throughout history, I would say, is religion and theocracy.
Yeah, and I don't want to divert the podcast into politics because that's not what this episode is about. But that is a comparable thing that I've heard several times is look on one side of the aisle or the other. And whether they know it or not, they're basically a part of a religion. And what I mean by that is if you look... Now, I don't want to give specific examples because I really want to keep this as as non-political as possible. But if you look at, I'll just say either side of the aisle, even if they're atheists, like their morals... their thought processes, everything that they listen to, everything that they consume through media, if they hear anything that's contradictory to that, then they block it out. And in my opinion, that is very similar to religion because even if they don't have like quote unquote higher power, they're still in terms worshiping something where they are giving it so much weight as compared to other things that they're willing to say, hey, my ideas are right, and any other ideas that come towards me, I'm automatically going to deem wrong without listening to them at all or giving them any preference. And that's
I would say that.
And that's what tribalism is. But if you wanted to look at it a little bit deeper, I could say that even if you're atheist or agnostic or whatever else there is out there, if you have a super hardcore belief in a set of morals on either side of the political spectrum, then that could be qualified as a religion. It's just not looking at a specific higher power or deity, but more so at the ethical code that you've come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good point. I have a question for you. And it's something I think about a lot, actually. I'm trying to think how I put this. Are people's driving factors? They're like the base code. If we were computers, our base code. Do we choose our religion or let's say politics? Do I choose my political affiliation because of my religion? Or do I choose both because of my moral code, my ethics? Does that make sense? Which one comes first? I don't think it's an easy question to answer. I think that's why, I'd just like to hear your take on it. Because I used to think people followed one side or the other politically because of their religion. But then it's like, is it deeper than that? If their religion were to change, I don't know. I'm stumbling over my words here. Do you get me?
Yeah, I think I kind of get what you're going towards. So I'll try to answer it and just
like if their religion changes, do you stick with your ethical code, or does your ethical code change because of your religion? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you got the three, if you got the politics, you've got the religion, and you've got your own morals, which one is immovable, right? Okay. I used to think it was religion. Now I'm thinking it's maybe politics, but you could argue it's the ethical code. I think most people would say that it's their ethical code, their morals, but yeah, I'm just not entirely sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What to start answering that, I would say first of all that the largest factor in what you're going to believe, whether it's religious or political or anything else in your moral code, is your parents,
Mm-hmm.
which, in my opinion, is very unfortunate because we should all be individualistic. We should all have our own morals. But whether you like it or not, everyone's going to grow up in a certain household, conservative, liberal, Christian, atheist, Islamic, and chances are you're going to stick to that because you're most comfortable with it, you're most exposed to it, and to change otherwise creates effort and some discomfort. But besides that, in terms of whether your moral code sticks with your religion, I think that throughout my life, looking at other people who have changed religions, it really seems like the choice of that individual on whether to keep their moral code. And what I mean by that is I've seen a lot of people who leave the Christian faith because they no longer believe in it, but they continue being honest and hardworking and a good neighbor and basically following what we classify as the 10 Commandments, other than a few like, love God or go to church and stuff like that. But I've also seen people who have left a certain religion and just go completely off the rails because it's more rebellious to what they grew up with. And you want to challenge what you were taught, and you want to show that what you were taught isn't true, so you kind of go completely against it. So it's hard to explain because in my mind it's half their choice, but it's also like whatever their life path takes. Maybe they don't have a complete say, but it does seem like it can go either way on whether your morals change with your religion or not.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think it's not, obviously it's not crazy to say that I changed my morals, right? And we'd all like to believe that we've all figured out the perfect moral code and we stick to it or whatever. But, we do change our morals. Of course, people change their religion. Of course, people change their politics. I'm just wondering if you have the three at odds with each other, if one contradicts the other, where do you make adjustments, right? I used to think that the most powerful one really was religion, even over moral code. And certainly over politics, right? If a politician that someone really loved, because maybe they were in line with one's religion, suddenly said something that contradicted their religion, they'd leave it, right? But I've actually seen some situations where that's not true, and whether they think so or not, like I've seen people choose politicians or certain affiliations that, like I said, whether they admit it or not, do sometimes contradict theology or that or a certain teaching. And so, like, it's not as clear cut as I thought. And I find that super interesting, like really interesting, because people like to think that those three are like perfectly connected, like all the time. And they'll even tell you that it is, and that's why they believe certain things, and But I found that that's not always the case, and that's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's hypocrisy. I'm not even saying it's necessarily that they're a hypocrite. I'm just saying that, like, it's a lot more complicated than people than people would have you believe.
Yeah. One example that comes to mind is I believe the current pope and the last pope have both been fairly against Trump and his immigration policies. So I would be interested to talk
Yeah.
to a Catholic in particular and be like, hey, yeah, you know, a Catholic who's like a Trump supporter, be like, hey, you know, Trump
Yeah.
has been saying that he supports building the wall, and your Pope just came out and said that there shouldn't be any walls because we're all children of God, and ask them what their viewpoint on that is. That would be very interesting. I could see a lot of people like siding more so with their political side and morals than their religious.
I could see it go both ways. Yeah.
But at the same time, that kind of comes down to, hey, do you believe that the Pope is like a direct mouthpiece for God, or do you believe that your Pope is just an influential leader and thus not everything he says is doctrine? You know, it's gonna depend a lot on the Catholic and what their beliefs actually are.
Yeah, that's interesting though. But do you go to like, hey, he's the most influential leader on earth. Thereby, wouldn't God pick someone who, you know, would say the most correct thing? You know what I mean? And why would you trust a politician over that person, right? Is another question that you could pose. You know, not trying to catch anyone in anything. I'm just saying, like, it's just interesting. I'd love to have like that conversation as well. You know, like where are priorities? Where do people's heads go? Because to me, one of the reasons I'm actually agnostic is of those three things: politics, ethics, and religion. To me, religion can't really change, you know, or at least that's what I was taught growing up, and that's my worldview, you know. Like, if there is one truth out there, it is the truth, meaning there is right and there is wrong. There are rules that can't really change. And so if there's any sort of contradictions, like at all, like if you find any sort of contradictions, like it kind of, that whole thing kind of falls apart. You know what I mean? That's how I see things. So yeah, that's like, from my perspective, it's hard to go throughout life and see that, you know, if I was a Catholic and then, you know, my politician contradicts the Pope and the Pope contradicts maybe my ethical beliefs, you know, what happens? Do I humble myself and, oh, he must know better than me? But that's hard to do because, you know, there's a certain set of rules and, you know, I read the Bible, and what if the Pope says something that's contrary to the Bible? Like, that's a whole nother can of worms, and it makes you think. I'm a natural overthinker. That probably has a lot to do with it.
Hey, overthinking is a good thing on a philosophy podcast, young man.
That's true. But I mean, break down my claim. Like, if there is one truth, and that's an argument in itself. But if there is one truth to a religion, isn't that's a pretty hard claim to back up, right? Like,
yeah. No, yeah, for sure. If there's a religion who says that there's one truth and we have it, and then suddenly there's things that are seemingly contradictory, then you're going to have to ask, hey, is it the contradictions that are seemingly true but are actually wrong? Or is it the religion itself that has claimed to be true all the way up until now? Because all it really takes is one falsehood, and then it would completely dismantle any credentials that religion would have.
Yeah, and in an age where it's supposedly so easy to find truth, you know, like we have access to so much knowledge and information, in a way it kind of makes it harder, right? Because there's also, if you have more truth, there's also more, I don't want to say lies, but misinformation, you know, I guess, and noise is, I guess, is a good way to put it. So it's hard to tell. I feel like people's radars for having to figure out truth you need to be sharper. You need to be a lot sharper because there's so much going on, right? There's so many contradictions, and this person said this, but this person said this, and I used to like both of them, and I thought both of them were great, but, you know, people are people, and this person's going to change his opinion. But is it an opinion, or is it really, doctrine? Is it this? Is it that? I think with the rise of the internet and with the rise of accessibility and so much knowledge, kind of throws it all into the dryer and mixes it up. For some people, it's like too much to handle. For someone like me, it's like there's so much going on. Like, how does one thing not contradict another? How am I even supposed to know? But for some people, it's easier, and that's valid as well.
Yeah, for me, as a Christian, the way that I've kind of thought about things in terms of like the internet and the vast amount of information we're getting is I've always tried to stay as open-minded as possible, as if my religion were like able to be incorrect. Because what I've seen so many times throughout my life is people who will have a religion and then they hear something contradictory, and instead of like educating themselves or debating about it or coming up with plausible reasons, they'll more so follow a route of blind faith, where they're like, well, I know what's true, therefore I'm going to block that argument out of my mind and never think about it again. And I think that that's really, I guess I would say, unhealthy, just because I do think it's really important for us as humans to be as educated as possible, as open-minded as possible, to keep all of our doors open. Like, I know there are people who I've met who don't believe in things as simple as evolution. And that's just baffling to me. And it's because they believe in the Bible, where it says that the earth was created in 7 days and God created all the animals at the same time. And so you ask them questions about evolution. You're like, hey, what about all these different species that we've dug up? What do you think about all the human ancestors? What do you think about dinosaurs? And the things that they come up with are just completely absurd. They just say like, oh, I don't care. Like, none of this evidence affects me because I know what's truth and what's not. And therefore, I can completely disregard that. So for me, I've always tried my best to be as open-minded as possible and to take in as much information. And sometimes I can correlate it and make sense of those things and my religious beliefs. And sometimes I can't. I can't make sense of the two things. But I think it's super important that you always keep an open mind with anything that you're being educated about, whether it's like offensive or whether it's going against your beliefs or not.
Yeah, and I think that's like a skill that is learned. I don't think anybody can naturally do that because we are products of our environments. It's hard. It's really, I think that's very difficult to do. I think, for most people, that's, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. It's very difficult for people to go outside of the bounds of their own framework, right? Even when you try like really hard, like I do it all the time, right? Like, am I viewing this from a biased lens? Am I seeing this the way, because of am I seeing this the way I am because of my own echo chambers and my own circles? I think it happens whether we realize it or not. Like, it's subconscious, right? And like I said, nowadays, social media that's what it's meant to do. Like, the algorithm pushes things to you that you want to see, or that will make you upset because they know your opinion. So for you to have to see it from your own lens, from like a bird's eye view, and like take yourself out of your body and say, look, if I didn't believe what I believe, what would I think about this? That's very, very hard to do. I just to be honest, like I am not great at that. Like, I'm very aware that like it's a thing and I try my best, but it takes constant effort. I think I'm not sure anybody can just do it subconsciously and they take everything at face value, right? I think we're always biased in some way. We're always looking at something with a biased lens. So that's very, very hard to do.
Yeah, Yeah, there's something, there's a really popular talk in my church called the belief window, where like it's basically talking about how everything you view in the world is through a window, and everything that you're viewing through that window is going to be influenced by like whatever filters you have. So even there's something really cool in psychology that says that depending on what language you know is going to depend on how you view the world. So like someone who speaks English is literally viewing the world differently than someone who speaks Mandarin.
Yeah.
And it's not because of cultural factors, but it's purely because of how your vocabulary works and how the grammar works and like how your sentences are formulated, which is really incredible to me because it shows that even something that we don't think about, like our language, is constantly determining what we're believing in and how we're feeling.
That's a very good point. I'll tell you a short little anecdote. Just like coincidentally, my girlfriend and I were talking about Hinduism and, you know, what like our views on, not really views on it, like we believe in it, but like what were we taught and everything. And just purely by coincidence, I was saying, I find it kind of interesting. And I found out that night that Tagalog, she speaks Tagalog, does not have a word for interesting in a good light. Or I'm sorry, in a not a good light, but you know, if I say something's interesting to you, it's not necessarily good or bad. You know, like if something terrible happens, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you know, like a massacre from 1,000 years ago. Like, oh, it's interesting to learn about that. Like in Tagalog, that doesn't make sense. To them, the translation for the word interesting means an interest that you like it, right? So if I was to say, oh, this massacre from 1,000 years ago is interesting, to her, that's like, I loved it. You know,
interesting.
Like I thought it, like I thought it was the coolest. Like I thought it was the coolest event, right? And I find interest in it because like it pleasures me. Like that's what the word interesting means to them. And so we had some sort of confusion, right? We were talking about like certain beliefs of Hinduism and certain events, and I was like, yeah, they're interesting. And she's like, what? It's like, yeah. And so I'm like, wait a minute. So what's the translation to you? You know, if I find something interesting, but not necessarily find like pleasure in it, what is it? She's like, we don't have a word for that. Like it kind of blew her mind. I had to explain that term to her. And so that kind of opened my eyes. It was my first experience. I'm learning Tagalog. It was kind of my first experience seeing a translation that's like way different, right? For the exact same word. And kind of just makes you think whenever you learn a different language. I can't remember. Are you bilingual? Did you learn Spanish?
I've picked up sentences and pieces of Mongolian, Swahili, and Spanish, but in no way am I like fluent in any of those.
Yeah, but you probably know. I mean, like, it is crazy. Like when you learn a different language, you kind of, it's weird to explain to someone it's never happened before, but you really do gain a new perspective on the world, you know, and how they see the world. And there are even words from Tagalog that I've learned that like are hard to translate into English because we don't really have a word for it. You know, I'd have to write like a couple sentences to describe what that one word means. And I think it's the same with religion. You know, when you talk about different religious beliefs and different ways on how they see the world, religion is almost like a language, you know, as far as the framework in which you see the rest of society and humanity. So I think it's a very good metaphor connecting the two.
Yeah, I wonder how much of cultures have stemmed from the religions. Like, even if you're an American citizen and you've never interacted with Christianity in your life, I wonder how much the religion itself has played a role in influencing your life as compared to, like, someone in China who has been constantly surrounded by people who are Buddhist, you know, even if they're not Buddhist themselves. Because I bet culture stems from religion like crazy just because of how long religion has been around. and how influential it's been.
Yeah.
Because there are,
Yeah.
not that any come, I don't have any that come to mind. I don't think there are any cultures in the entire world that don't like have a religion. I don't know of any that are truly atheist. Even in Asia, where they don't think about God very often, they still are very much involved in like Taoism or Buddhism or spiritualism. So I would be interested to like go out to an African tribe who truly doesn't believe in a higher power and kind of pick their brain apart and see like how they think about the world as compared to us here in the U.S. because of religion.
True. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I may very well be wrong, but I'm thinking of like medieval Japan, where most of what I've seen, like their culture is, I don't even know. I'm gonna get it wrong if I give an example, but like it's a way to feel, and it's a way to approach life, and it's a way to see life. I mean, did they have a god, like gods in like medieval Japan?
I believe so, because I've heard of several Japanese gods. There's like Amaterasu and Tsukunome and things like that. I'm not sure how old those gods are, but I doubt that they originated in like the 19th or 20th century. They're probably several centuries old at least.
Oh no, I think they're older than that. Yeah, but okay, that was just the one that I thought of. But you're right. It's a really good observation that seems like every culture is connected to some sort of like belief in a higher power. Not that that's where the buck stops, right? Like culture is obviously bigger than that, but
right. Yeah. Culture has several different factors in what shapes it, but I mean, religion it has to be the largest. I mean, just thinking about like the Pilgrims who came over after Christopher Columbus and originated in America, and then you skip all the way to 1776 with the Founding Fathers. The Constitution was based off of Christianity by a pretty large amount, and that's where a lot of debates come in these days about separation of church and state. It's like, on one hand, you do need to have church and state as much as possible. But on the other hand, the word God is listed in the Constitution several times, and it's in our Pledge of Allegiance, so...
Yeah.
It's super, super ingrained into America, and I would be surprised if it wasn't the same way with most other countries.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm not gonna pretend like it's not a thing. Like if you look at both sides of the two-party system in America, by the way, any of our international listeners, I bet you can guess which country we live in. I mean, there's no denying that like the political right is very influenced by Christianity. I mean, like you can't deny that. I mean, just look online for like 5 seconds. I mean, it's very influenced. I'm not going to say both sides aren't. I'm just saying that's the stereotype, and it's very much true. Like there is a lot of influence. Like religion influences politics like big time here. Like for better or worse, that's a political discussion that they have every day. But it is a thing, and we're not the only country that has that. I think you might have a point in saying that almost every country culturally does. Has to start somewhere from some religion or some religious belief, some ethical code that comes from theology. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't right now, but off the top of my head, I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the UK, England, very much rooted in Christianity, very much. Most of Europe is Christian.
Yeah, I wonder... It's like the scenario of the chicken and the egg. I wonder if humans like had their moral codes and then made religion off of that, or if religion truly did precede humans and humans obtained their moral code from a higher power.
Yeah, I don't know if we could ever answer that. I'm trying to think of like the farthest back civilization we have a record of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just think about things like Stonehenge. I mean, even apparently they have evidence that it was not only a way to, like an astronomical calendar looking for eclipses and phases of the moon and stuff, but apparently it was also used for religious regions. And that's like one of the oldest archaeological finds I've ever known of, but I'm sure there are ones that are way older.
Yeah. True. Do we still have time? Because I got a question that might warrant some discussion. Unless you want to keep going on this. You have anything else?
No, I got nothing else. Go ahead.
All right. So let's talk about religions at odds with each other, because we talked a little bit about wars. I want to dive a little bit more into that. How come religions, it seems, evidently, are so I don't think dogmatic is the word, but like they war with each other, they almost can't coexist. They obviously do nowadays, but we've had real trouble with that over the past thousands of years, right? And even today, I mean, I know that you got Middle East and everything, but if the argument truly is that culture and government aren't that much different, well, then, we still get in wars every day over political things, that might stem from theology. But sometimes it really is cut and dry. I mean, the Crusades were very much, a war of religion. We got what's going on in the Middle East. You could very much argue is a war of religion. Even on a smaller scale, lots of I can't think of any examples, so I won't go there. But talk about like Troy versus the Greeks or whatever. It was a war of religion. Is that right? Troy and the Greeks, or am I mixing that up?
I honestly can't say. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about back then, right? The Greeks and the Romans. I mean, was if you boil down to it, was a war of religion. So why is it that they can't coexist? Why are we always at odds with each other? Why can't we just live and let live, I guess?
Yeah, I guess my answer for that would be because religion is different than just having beliefs, right? Religion is constructed, it's organized, there's rules to follow. So if I were just a believer in a certain few different things, like, oh yeah, I believe there's a God, and I believe he loves us, and I believe he wants us to be nice to each other, and I leave it at that, then yeah, I'm sure I could coexist with different people who believe different things and be just fine, because there are so many different things that overlap. There's so many common beliefs that aren't going to be contradicting each other constantly. But religion is completely different because there's so many beliefs, there's so many scriptures, there's so many laws that, one religion might believe that you, let's see, what's a good example? Maybe for Islam, maybe they believe that women should wear the hijab, right? Make sure that their hair is not shown. Make sure that they are, I don't know the right word. I don't even know why they wear the hijab, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to act like I do. But let's say that they have that rule.
I think it's purity. It's purity in women.
Okay. And then let's say that you have this Islamic family who moves to America where literally everyone around them is not wearing hijab. Then it's like, it could be offensive, or there are things that could overlap and interfere with you. Like maybe there are other people who say, hey, you don't need to wear hijab, and try to change your beliefs. I think it's just when there are so many different rules and some of them are so strict that you live next to people who have completely different laws and rules, then yeah, even though those laws aren't dictated by the government, there's still laws that can interfere with the lives of other people, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
Hopefully
True.
that makes sense. I think that's my best answer.
No, I think it's a great answer. I think that when there's so much doctrine, some of it might actively demonize another religion. You know what I mean? Like directly, like this religion is incorrect and should be seen as that way and treated as that way. And those feelings can obviously escalate in a culture and in a government. You're right, absolutely. And also the similarities, I think, can be a big thing. I mean, we talked about Christianity and Islam having similarities. Well, I know that some of the Crusades were a battle over holy territory, right? Both of those religions believe that Jerusalem is a holy city. And so they obviously want control over that city. They want to have that under their, I guess, jurisdiction. So they fight over land. They fight over territory.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that. There are definitely several different like physical things, such as places, that can be fought over for religions. Another big point that just came to me is obviously a lot of religions want to convert others and push others to believe in the same things, and that means and that means that if you're seeing someone do something that opposes your religious belief, you're not going to say, oh, that's fine, they have their agency, they just believe in different things, I'm going to leave them be. But you instead step in and you try to interfere. Like gender is a huge thing these days. I know a lot of Christian religions believe in only 2 genders. That's a huge thing that's been debated for quite a few years now. Well, there's the question of, hey, even if you do believe that, are you going to just stick on your side of the aisle and continue following the laws that you believe in? Or are you going to step over the aisle and try to stop other people from doing things that are against your beliefs?
Yeah, true. That's a good point. I'm thinking when you talk about converting, I think about Christianity in the like medieval times. That was a big thing when it came to conversion. If you talk about like Vikings and Greeks and Egyptians, they didn't really have interest in conversion. In fact, you look at people like the Vikings. I mean, they were like, conquer these guys, enslave these guys, kill these guys. They believe in a different God, But on the flip side, you look at Christianity. Their goal when it came to conquering and annexing other kingdoms, in the UK, was to bring other people into the fold. You know what I mean? Was to impose. I mean, impose sounds bad, but impose their religion upon other people that maybe already had one or didn't have one because they believed that was saving people, right? So they took that as their holy mission.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point. I did not think of that, but that is a very good point. I don't know if it's the number one cause, but it certainly was. It certainly was a cause.
Yeah. It one movie that Buck and I both highly recommend, because we watched it a while ago, is Silence, that has Andrew Garfield and remind me the other guy's name.
Liam Neeson. Oh, and Adam Driver.
Adam Driver. Great movie. You guys could go check it out. But essentially, they go to Japan. Yeah. They're attempting to convert other people to their Christian religion, and the Japanese government comes down hard on them and has a bunch of their followers killed and tortured and tries to make them disavow their religion. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that that's another example just that we've seen in history that was based off of true events, or at least inspired off of true events. It's like, hey, you're bringing another religion into our country. That doesn't just mean, hey, you're believing in your own things, but that means that you're automatically a threat to what my people believe in and how they're going to act, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and it's a good recommendation for this week's topic. Go watch Silence. In that movie, it also went both ways. I mean, so Andrew Garfield, obviously, I think it was the Portuguese. Portuguese are trying to convert them. I think it was Protestants, were trying to bring people into the Christian fold in Japan, but also the other way around. I mean, you certainly had Japanese executing Christians, but not always. I mean, a lot of times when they executed the Christians in that movie, it was to make an example, so that the Christian Japanese people would come back, you know. So it wasn't purely death; it was also conversion. It's really a war of religion. You definitely see that throughout history. Like it's divine destiny to not only believe what you believe, but share that with as many people as you can. Make that the cultural, the one dominant religion in the country. You know, that was the goal of a lot of governments and reigning powers throughout history. Was, hey, it's our duty and it's our responsibility to essentially save as many people as we can because we have the power to do so.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Which is kind of scary, you know, like, because what if I want to believe something else, but the ruling power doesn't? You know, in that movie, there's a lot of like secret Christians that couldn't really practice openly. And again, that can get political. You can even go to like the beginning of America was very much people who wanted to practice religion. You know, freedom of religion was a huge thing.
The Holocaust.
And the Revolutionary War. Yeah, the Holocaust. You know, the Nazis wanted a certain religion and a certain way of looking at life, and you know who should live and who should die, and they imposed that on others. So it goes back to war and the reason why people do what they do. But yeah, it's not purely dominance all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's dominance, but not in the sense of like killing all the time. Sometimes it's conversion, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, we are a little bit over the hour mark, so we'll probably go ahead and cut it there. I think we've hit a lot of good points. I enjoy talking about theology, and in particular, like the role. Not so much. I feel like in this episode we didn't so much focus on is there a God, what's right and what's wrong, but more so how has religion shaped humanity, and is it for better or for worse? So I feel like that was a very productive episode. We do have to leave the viewers with a question or two. So I could go ahead and go first while you think about one if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. So my question is, let's say humanity someday did learn that there is definitely one God. Then what would that change about how we treat each other? So basically, if humanity found out one truth and we all shared that truth, then would there still be wars? Would there still be arguments? Would there still be unkindness? Or would everyone step in line immediately and follow that one religion wholeheartedly? That's my question for you guys this week.
Good question. I think we should start doing questions like 20 minutes before we end, because now I want to talk about it.
You know what we could do?
That's a very good question.
You know what we could do is we could always come back to our question on the next podcast and be like, hey, I've been thinking about it.
At the beginning, just for 10 minutes?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it this past week.
Yeah.
Let's answer a question from last time.
I like that. That's a good idea. Might have to implement that. My question, see if I can remember it. Oh, yeah. Should rules be imposed upon religion internationally to make the world a better place, or should religion be able to be as influential as it has been for the last 100 years?
Ooh.
I think that kind of goes deeper into whether, the grandiose and the big impact that religion has is a good or a bad thing, and it could go definitely both ways. But if you had the complete control, what would you do? How would that impact the next, let's say, 200 years of society?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Would you leave it be, or would you do something about it?
I like that question because that goes back to what we said about how like governments, their laws are confined to their territories, but religions, like you could have it spread all over
religion
the world.
is not. Yeah, it's weird. Like, what if we treated religion as we do, countries on like the UN? Would there be alliances between religions instead of countries or whatnot?
Ooh.
It'd be interesting. I think a lot of people would be like, just leave it be. Who am I to put in implications and rules on religion? But if we had rules on religion, maybe the way we'd see like international relations would change big time, and boundaries and countries and cultures.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll leave it there with you. Make sure you go and smash the like button, subscribe, share, favorite, and whatever else. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you leave in the comments below what episodes you'd like us to go over or any questions and comments from this week's episode. Again, thanks so much for listening in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
On the other side of the social eclipse.
Yes, sir.